In the world of drug trafficking, there are few figures as enigmatic and feared as El Mencho. He is the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, one of the most powerful and violent drug organizations in Mexico. For years, he has evaded capture, leaving a trail of bloodshed and terror in his wake. Who is he, and what drives him? His name is Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, but to the world he is known as El Mencho. He was born on July 17, 1966, in the state of Michoacán, Mexico. He grew up in a poor family that cultivated avocados and dropped out of school in the 5th grade. At 14, Nemesio began guarding marijuana plantations, becoming privy to the inner workings of the narcotics trade. After several years of toiling away at the plantations, he found himself yearning for a better life, one that promised opportunities and success. Thus, he set his sights on the United States, a land of hope and dreams for many. However, entering the country was no easy feat, and Nemesio had to resort to illegal means to achieve his goals. In the 1980s, he made his way to California, where he assumed various names and identities, such as Ruben Avila, Jose Lopez Prieto, Miguel Valadez, Carlos Hernandez Mendoza, and Roberto Salgado, among others, to avoid detection and scrutiny. During that time, he lived in the San Francisco Bay Area and was arrested by the local police for stolen property and carrying a loaded gun, a sign of the troubled life he had led up until that point. Make matters worse, just 2 months after his arrest, his first child was born, adding to his already mounting list of responsibilities. Despite these setbacks, El Mencho's desire for a better life persisted, and he crossed the U.S.-Mexico border several times during the late 1980s, using his slew of aliases to avoid detection. According to the DEA and Mexican investigators, it was during this period that he became involved in the production and trade of methamphetamine in Redwood City, California, alongside his brother-in-law, Abigail Gonzalez Valencia. El Mencho's criminal exploits would not go unnoticed. He was arrested again in San Francisco in 1989 for selling narcotics. Despite being deported to Mexico, he re-entered the U.S. and resettled in San Francisco. It wasn't long before he found himself in trouble again, this time on federal drug charges in September 1992. Court records reveal that El Mencho and his brother Abraham were at a San Francisco bar called Imperial to carry out a heroin deal. Abraham was responsible for the transaction, while El Mencho acted as a lookout. At just 26 years old, he may have been younger than Abraham, but he was streetwise enough to sense that something was off about the situation. He warned his brother that the men they gave the heroin to handed over perfectly stacked dollar bills instead of loose ones. Through a wiretap conversation, the police overheard El Mencho telling his brother that they were dealing with undercover cops and to never do business with them again. Just 3 weeks after the incident, both El Mencho and his brother Abraham were apprehended by the police. As expected, El Mencho claimed his innocence, insisting that he had no part in the heroin exchange and that the agents were falsifying evidence against him. The prosecution, on the other hand, insisted that both brothers were working together. El Mencho had limited options. If he declared himself not guilty, his brother, who already had a criminal record of drug-related offenses, would face life imprisonment. His defense counsel was also aware of the fact that a jury trial could potentially result in acquittal. However, El Mencho decided to plead guilty to save Abraham from facing a lifetime behind bars. Consequently, he was slapped with a 5-year sentence and incarcerated at the Big Spring Correctional Center in Texas, which, as it turns out, accommodates a sizable population of undocumented immigrants. After serving 3 years, he was granted parole and deported back to Mexico at the age of 30. In Mexico, he initially joined the police force in Cabo Corrientes and Tomatán, located in the state of Jalisco. However, after some time, he left the police and became a full-time member of the Milenio Cartel, one of the most notorious drug trafficking organizations in Mexico. To strengthen his relationship with the Milenio Cartel, El Mencho married one of the clan leader's sisters, Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia. It was during this time that El Mencho would become a leading figure in organized crime. In the Milenio Cartel, El Mencho's rise to power was far from a smooth ride. He began as a mere member of the assassin squad that protected drug lord El Maradona in the Milenio Cartel. However, things took a drastic turn when El Maradona was arrested by Mexican authorities on August 12, 2003. In Los Zetas, backed by the Gulf Cartel, launched a fierce attack against the Milenio Cartel in Michoacán. Valencia family was forced to flee, leaving El Mencho with no choice but to relocate to Guadalajara, the state capital, with his father-in-law José Luis González Valencia. In Guadalajara, El Mencho and the Milenio Cartel formed an alliance with the powerful Sinaloa Cartel subgroup, led by Ignacio Nacho Coronel, a close ally of the drug lord Joaquín Guzmán, also known as El Chapo. Under Coronel's leadership, El Mencho and his group managed the Sinaloa Cartel's drug operations and finances in Colima and Jalisco. However, the Milenio Cartel suffered a major blow when its top leader, Oscar Valencia, was arrested on October 28, 2009, followed by El Mencho's brother, Juan Carlos, on May 6, 2010. A few months later, Coronel was killed in a shootout with the Mexican army. The Milenio Cartel began to unravel, and El Mencho saw an opportunity to take over its leadership. The cartel split into two factions. One side was known as La Resistencia, and the other was Los Matazetas, headed by El Mencho. La Resistencia accused Los Matazetas of turning in Oscar Orlando to the authorities, with El Mencho leading the group. He asked other Milenios to hand over the clan for killing the group of men that reported to him, but they refused, leading to an internal war. The two fought for control over drug-smuggling turfs in Jalisco, with Los Matazetas emerging as the victors. The group then launched a propaganda campaign to legitimize its presence and denounce extortions carried out by rival gangs against civilians, businessmen, and government authorities. Later on, the group changed its name to the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, solidifying its influence in western Mexico. As leader of the CJNG, El Mencho managed to solidify his position in the criminal underworld by a complex web of strategies that included territorial expansion, corrupting government officials, and dealing with the constant threat of rival gangs like Los Zetas and the Knights Templar Cartel. With a tenacious grip on Jalisco and adjacent states, El Mencho managed to establish the CJNG as one of the top criminal organizations in Mexico, and himself as one of the country's most wanted criminals. The CJNG's rise to power was characterized by an aggressive and sensationalist approach to public violence that included direct attacks against Mexico's security forces, which earned El Mencho a reputation as the principal enemy of the state and as a dangerous criminal. This notoriety was further exacerbated by the fall of Mexico's former top crime bosses, which cleared the way for El Mencho to gain visibility and status. His grip on the drug trafficking operations in Jalisco, Colima, and Guanajuato is unmatched, and he created a bastion for methamphetamine production and trade. While their operational capacity in Mexico is concentrated in 8 states, including Nayarit and Veracruz, where they hold a firm grip on drug trafficking operations, their fight against competing rival drug groups in Morelos, Guerrero, and Michoacán adds an extra layer of complexity to their operations. Internationally, the CJNG reportedly has ties with criminal groups in the US, Latin America, Europe, Asia, and Africa, with their focus primarily on trafficking cocaine and methamphetamine. This international network adds a level of perplexity to their operations, making it difficult for the authorities to track their movements and operations. The CJNG's success has translated into staggering wealth, with the government estimating that El Mencho's group has about $50 billion in total assets. This success was shared with his brother-in-law, Abigail González Valencia, who headed a drug trafficking group known as Los Cunis, allied to the CJNG. Abigail was later arrested by the Mexican Navy on 28 February 2015. But why is it so difficult to catch El Mencho? Since the 2000s, the DEA's Los Angeles office has been investigating El Mencho's criminal operations. In 2011, Mexico's Office of the General Prosecutor put out an arrest warrant for El Mencho, accusing him of illegal firearm possession and organized crime involvement. They offered a handsome reward of $100,000 for any information that leads to his arrest. 3 years later, El Mencho was indicted by the United States District Court for being the leader of a continuing criminal enterprise. On August 25, 2012, the Mexican Federal Police Unit in Tonaya, Jalisco, received an anonymous tip that an organized crime cell was present in a nearby rural community. Once the security forces arrived at the scene, a fierce exchange of gunfire ensued between the two groups, resulting in the death of 6 CJNG gunmen. Initially, rumors circulated that Mencho had been apprehended, but the Mexican government later clarified that he had not been captured. In an attempt to avoid Mencho's arrest, the CJNG used a series of highly coordinated tactics to block several highways and roads across the Guadalajara metropolitan area by setting at least 37 vehicles on fire. The strategy behind this move was to create blockades that would hinder the security forces' movements in Jalisco's capital, thus buying Mencho time to escape. The CJNG positioned the blockades in strategic locations to prevent reinforcements from arriving or leaving Guadalajara, with the ultimate goal of providing Mencho with a clear escape route. After the attacks had ended, the government confirmed that Mencho was in the area and had managed to evade capture. Years later, on May 1, 2015, the Mexican government launched Operation Jalisco, a military-led campaign designed to combat organized crime groups in Jalisco and capture their leaders. The announcement followed a series of violent attacks from the CJNG in the preceding weeks. Intelligence reports indicated that Mencho was in Tonaya on the day the operation was inaugurated, which prompted an offensive to capture him. As the security forces advanced to the location where Mencho was purportedly hiding, a fierce gun battle erupted between law enforcement officials and CJNG gunmen. According to the Mexican government, Mencho may be hiding in Jalisco, which is the CJNG's stronghold. Authorities believe that he moves frequently across various municipalities in Jalisco, as well as in the states of Michoacán, Colima, and Nayarit, without staying in one place for too long. Authorities also suspect that Mencho's inner circle is comprised of mercenaries with military training, while his second security circle is much larger in size and serves as a rear guard to warn his inner circle of any suspicious activity and ambush potential adversaries who get too close to him. In 2018, the PGR announced a staggering reward of $1.6 million for any leads that result in Mencho's capture. This was announced during the revelation of a new cooperation plan between the DEA and Mexican authorities. The program focused on attacking the financial structure of organized crime and establishing a law enforcement group to investigate international cases. Bounty was increased to a whopping $10 million in 2021 by the Departments of State, Justice, and Treasury, making it one of the largest approved in the history of the Narcotics Rewards Program. Recent reports have suggested that Mencho is ill with kidney disease and has built a hospital to seek treatment. However, in February 2022, unverified rumors began to circulate, suggesting that Mencho had passed away from respiratory arrest while receiving medical care. But it's yet to be officially confirmed. So, what do you guys think? Comment down below. Mencho's story is a testament to the power and influence of drug cartels in Mexico. Despite being one of the most wanted men in the country, he has managed to evade capture for over a decade, thanks in large part to CJNG's vast network of informants and allies. It's unclear what the future holds for Mencho and the CJNG, but one thing is certain: the Mexican drug war shows no signs of abating anytime soon. The fight against drug cartels and organized crime in Mexico remains one of the biggest challenges facing the country and its people. This concludes the video. If you found it enjoyable, please don't forget to click the like and subscribe button and leave a comment below. If you're interested in viewing similar content, be sure to check out our other videos on crime, history, and current events. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.